Howdy, Chits fam. Welcome back to Chit Chat, where we are interested in getting our shit together, following the dictum, material well-being follows spiritual well-being. The word chit means enlightened awareness, and there are many impositions to that enlightenment. So we want to talk about what we need to do to remove those impositions, and there are many. Today, joining me, of course, today and every time. I'm Jaya. And today I want to talk about a concept that I came in touch with in the other podcast I did called integrity in motion. And well, let's start off with just talking about integrity. And I guess there's some context with things that I came across in the world and in our own communities that made me think about talking about this today. But integrity basically means when there's no incongruence with the persona and we'll use the word animus because it just sounds cool. Persona, this is like Carl Jung sort of language, but persona means basically the image of the self that you present to the public. It's like your public self. And it's contrasted with this idea of anima or animus, which I think they translate as the soul. But I think for Vedanta, it would be more precisely related to like the subtle body or the antakarna, which means the inner instrument. And so basically integrity as I understand it, and I guess as I understand it with this sort of context, means where there's no incongruence between these two, the persona and the inner instrument, your inner well and your inner self. And I don't know, I think there are probably very few people who can honestly say that there's no schism between the two, like in the real life, that there's no absolutely zero schism between what people see on the outside and what's actually going on the inside. So the idea of integrity in motion is that, yeah, we're all falling short of our ideals. That's kind of part of what it means to be human. But as long as you're intentionally moving toward your ideal, progressively, even if that progress is slow, then that's integrity in motion. And so you kind of, I don't want to say get a pass, but in whichever ways you're falling short, that's not the important part. The important part is the movement toward embodying that full integrity. So what got me thinking about this is that I feel that, like I said, most of us suffer from the schism of the divide between persona and animus. And I think especially people in spiritual groups, we would consider ourselves as people who are moving towards embodying a deeper integrity because we have some sort of practice. But I guess what I was feeling frustrated on a personal level, this is personal, but I think it's also observational for me, is that when your practice doesn't really have that much intention in it, can you honestly say that it's integrity in motion? Like, given that I'm assuming that most of us as humans, or just as living entities, we like to give ourselves passes. I give myself a pass for not embodying higher level integrity every day. And I have to do that so I don't go into complete desperation and despair. So I definitely give myself a pass. And the way that I do it is that, well, anyway, I'm moving toward the ideal, even though I'm moving very slowly. Or even though I've taken some steps back, but I'm still, I'll keep moving. I'll get up and try again. But I guess I was feeling frustration on a personal level. And I kind of think this is observational. When you're not having like real intention and you're so-called moving towards embodying higher integrity, then are you really, is that even integrity in motion? So you don't have integrity. And do you really have integrity in motion unless you're putting intentional energy into that practice? Okay, now let me give a real example. Two of them. Well, I saw something about Marilyn Manson, is it? So in the last week, a story came out and his nonsense, it looks like it was his nonsense, or maybe someone's lying on him, but seeing some of the things that he said in public, it looks like it was his nonsense. So one lady came out saying that she was like tortured and sexually abused and all these things from him when she was young. And, he groomed her, and then after she came out, then a whole bunch of people started coming out, And of course, he tried to play it as they're trying to take me down because I'm rich and powerful. But then there's like all this stuff of him, what he said, like in real time from his concerts and all sorts of things, Whereas like, okay, it's not too far of a stretch that you might have did these things. So okay, there's a lack of integrity there. That's common in the Hollywood world and all that. Where I guess where it pinches me the most is like looking at our own communities or just like the self-help community or the spiritual community. And like, let's be real, like even our own selves, like when we share stuff on Instagram, like I haven't been sharing a lot of stuff on Instagram because of this problem. And that's why I want to talk about it today. Like you see people sharing stuff on Instagram, like some cute picture and some like, you know, be the best version of yourself sort of thing in the caption. Some positive, some sort of wisdom is being offered in the captions. It's very inspiring. We may like it and so on. And I also do that. You know, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that. But I was thinking for myself, like, okay, I do that, but how much intentional energy am I actually putting into being the best version of myself? And how much am I just surrendering to the same old cycles of nonsense on a daily basis? Like, I'm not even like improving one minor thing. Not even like one minor thing is getting the improvement or the attention it needs. And then the next day I'll, you know, go and do a post and say, hey guys, integrity in motion. And at a certain point, it just kind of eats away at your soul if you're not really investing that energy. And so that's how I came to this topic. And yeah, I just thought it'd be a fun topic to bring up, and we can hear some questions for those who are participating with us in the live. But what are your thoughts? I've spoken a lot already. What do you want to say to this?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that I share in a lot of what you're saying because, you know, we also talk as friends off of Chit Chat, and we're talking as friends on Chit Chat right now too. and so I've also been going through something similar where I took like a 1 month long break off of posting anything on Instagram or social media for that matter, just because I was having a very similar kind of dilemma of just like, I don't feel like, I started to feel like inauthentic because I felt pressured to fit into this persona or like fit into the like social media persona of just like, I gotta be, you know, happy and an expert in my field and always producing things and always what's the next offering and always this and always that and always like being quote unquote inspirational.
Right,
and I was just like,
motivational.
And motivational and like deep and like all of this stuff. And my past month has been a little bit on a personal level tumultuous, not because of anything bad, just because like I was in Brazil and then I came back to Ecuador, and then my mother and my grandmother came. And then we moved, and then me and my partner moved here to Cuenca, and my mom and grandma came here, another part of Ecuador, came to like, man, it was just like a lot going on.
Right.
And I really felt like, it was so interesting because I felt something inside of myself just being like, I genuinely, like, I don't feel like sharing right now. You know, like I don't feel like sharing about like what's going on in my life and having to put it into like something that people can relate to or something like that, you know?
Right.
And I feel like it's so interesting because I've seen a lot of people, you know, I'm just thinking of one of our dear friends. I don't think it's confidential, but I'm not going to say her name anyway. But recently she was just like, you know, I made a close friends Instagram story thing just because I feel like the more and more, you know, I get followers on Instagram, the less personal it becomes and the more it becomes about like my business and like, you know, just like putting that side of me out in the world. And she said like my original reason for joining social media in the first place was just to like, just share about my life and be goofy and, you know, just be silly and like whatever. And she was like, and so a lot of that has been lost. So I'm starting this. And I don't know. I mean, the break was really awesome. My own social media break. But it really got me thinking about this, what you're bringing up, right? About my own integrity and what I'm sharing and how much I'm playing into that system of like persona versus anima, you know, to use Carl Jung's language, which I like Carl Jung, but I haven't read him in a long time.
Me too. I like her.
I like Carl Jung. But I saw a post by one of our friends. Her name is Vrindavan, Vinodini. And I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's a lot. but I really, really, really appreciated what she was saying. And I'll just kind of end with this. But the name of the post was Squeezing Myself In. And she was talking about how like in Instagram, you know, like, or in social media in general, you have like this many characters, you know, in Twitter, you have this many characters to like show your worth or like show your stock. So it has to kind of be like, you know, like the trap that we fall into and that many people do, you know, we do it, is that I have to kind of just like set myself apart from the rest. So I'm like an international yogi, you know, I'm an expert master yoga teacher with like years and years of experience, you know, like you see this kind of stuff. I'm like, transformational, whatever, I'm gonna help you get your highest purpose, you know, like whatever. It kind of becomes sensationalized in these like little bios or in these little tweets, because there's this need for the persona to basically like shine, you know, for the persona to kind of like shine through. And so what she was saying in her post was like how unnatural that is really to do, you know, because it's really kind of not giving us space to describe about where we are right now. You know, it like solidifies us into like I am an expert this, you know, like it's a solidified.
Well, it's the, what do you call it? We are the product. Like you're the product. So you're what's the word? Commodify, I guess is the word.
Yeah.
So the persona is a commodified tiny little aspect of your personality, and you have to really sell it. Otherwise it's gonna engage with it.
I'm just gonna read a little bit of what she wrote because I really like it. I'm not gonna read it too much. So she goes on to say about the character limits and social platforms have said and all of this stuff. And she says, it's encouraged for us to find the most attractive words to describe ourselves. Words like expert, guru, master, brilliant, etc. So she's saying these words are abundant wherever you look. Although that may be true for some to use, it does make me question, are there really so many experts out there?
Seriously? Oh my God, yes.
And so she says, I'm not sure. And I really like this part. She says, there's little to no room for humility and the process of growth. After all, what do you feel more inspired by? Expert and gifted meditation guru or lifelong student of meditation? And so she says, perhaps
or hot mess.
Or hot mess.
Right.
So she says, perhaps it's the latter that you feel more inspired by, the latter being lifelong student of meditation, right?
Coach.
And she's like, and she's saying like claps for that. And she says, I have to admit, there's a big part of me that still gets enamored by the former, by like the expert, you know, guru. And I think that that's the trap that a lot of us fall into when we see these words, when we see this kind of position of like, I'm an expert in my field, I have all this experience, whatever it is, you know, the success. We've talked a lot about in the past two Chit Chat success and famoisie and how they're not equal, even though a lot of times we conflate them. And so I really appreciated her because she just really like says like vulnerably, like I still get enamored by the former. And I'll just read this last thing. She says, the emphasis on form versus substance is all pervading. And that's what marketing is all about. Impressive words combined with beautiful optics to support it. Honestly, it does a totally mental and emotional number on me. And that's what I was feeling. You know, her and I actually talked about this post a lot. And I was feeling that too. Yeah, I reached out to her and I was like, this is exactly what I've been feeling. Just like
wait, why don't we have her on? We need to get her on next week.
We should have her on. Okay, I'm gonna talk.
Oh my God, just to discuss this post. Yeah.
Yeah, just to discuss this post because I feel like it's so interesting and beautiful the way that she wrote about it and in a very honest way. And I had been feeling that. I've been feeling that inauthenticity, that like emotional kind of like tiredness and just like exhaustion of just like trying to keep up with like form as opposed to substance. And then of course the substance suffered, and I felt like and form doesn't really like hold up, you know, like form doesn't hold up.
It's like being like, where is the substance? Where did it go?
So anyway, the last thing I'll read is, where is the room to be honest and share where we are at and invite others to meet us there? And so, and she says a lot of other things, but I feel like that's such a, what's it called? And I know I've been talking a lot, so I'll stop here. But as far as like we go, like as myself, as yourself, like I'm not a pure devotee. I'm not a perfected being. you know? And so a lot of times when I've had this happen, and I'm sure you've had this happen too, like whether in a yoga setting or in a spiritual setting, like people start to look up to you, you start to have acolytes, you know, people are just like, you know, wide-eyed look and want to be your follower and stuff like that. It starts to get kind of uncomfortable. I don't know what your experience has been like with it, but for me, it gets really uncomfortable because I'm like, I can't really share with you like what she was saying, what Vrindavan was saying, like where I'm actually at. And now I'm kind of put into this position of like, I'm the yoga guru or whatever, and I have to like help you with all of your yoga problems, and I can't really share what my process is, you know? Maybe you get like one of those per 6 months, you know? You know how like social media personalities would be like, trigger warning, vulnerable posts, you know, like they'll do that like once every like 6 months. Like you can't post stuff like that all the time, which I think is for good reason. You don't want to be like spilling your tea all around, you know, the neighborhood. But I don't know. What do you think? I've been talking for a long time.
Yeah, well, why don't you take Mike's question? I need to just switch. I've been having internet trouble all week, and it just switched to the bad internet Wi-Fi. So I just need to switch back. So I might just be off for like 15 seconds. So you could take Madhava's question, and then I'm gonna jump right back in.
So Madhava Puri says, I remember John Coltrane would never give saxophone lessons. He told people they could come watch him practice and would show them a few things if they asked. Arguably one of the greatest musicians ever. Thank you so much for bringing that up, Madhava Puri, because I was retelling a story to a student of mine recently because he was asked, he's someone that I see kind of weekly. And he asked me about, I'm helping him kind of like with his yoga career and his yoga mentorship and stuff like that. We have 3 Jayas now, so let me see. Oh, there we go. Okay. I was like,
can we switch the size? Okay, now I feel better.
Anyway, I was telling this Jaya, which I told you actually this Jaya off of Chit Chat, I think, because I'm speaking about Madhava Puri's comment that he made, that before when I had kind of like just started reigniting my bhakti path, because I met bhakti yogis in India when I was 21, but I didn't start getting serious until I was like 26. Mm-hmm. And so when I started reigniting it, of course, I was already a yoga teacher. So a lot of my students noticed immediately, like the switch in me, you know, like how I started to carry myself, what I started to speak about. And I was telling you this, Jai, that at the beginning, a lot of students would be like, what version of the Bhagavad Gita should I read? And can you teach me the Bhagavad Gita? And, you know, you should start a group here at the yoga studio so that we could learn about the Bhagavad Gita. And I truly felt so uncomfortable. You know, I was just like, I always told them, I was just like, you can go to the Bhakti Center, you know, you can go learn from others, you know? And I feel like this is a really interesting point when it comes to integrity. And this is kind of what we're talking about, because we talked about this before with like the success in the Femoisi and the blocking of real knowledge. If I'm not in integrity, and if I don't just tell someone, actually, I don't know my Chit, you know, like actually, you should go and learn from this person, you know. But like, how many? And I'm not trying to say that, like, you know, I mean, maybe a little bit, like, pat myself on the back. But I mean, like, I am saying that it's like, how often do we see from a business perspective or a marketing perspective, which so much of social media has turned into, how often do we see, go to that person? No, it's like, I want you to be with me. I want you to be my student or my client, or I want, you know, to So it's such a difficult.
It's an interesting dynamic between the individual and the collective, which can, on the one hand, to have like your tribe, so to speak, they use language like this, or your like-minded association, which is some language you'll find in our communities. But basically, something about the collective that helps to bolster the individual. You know, in conventional world, I think you would call that like the status quo, right? You have the collective, they exist in a certain way, and you're kind of obliged to exist in a similar way. And that can be very healthy. Like, you know, it helps you have a strong sense of identity, of your place and position in the world and where you need to be moving. So it has a healthy aspect. And then there's this other aspect to it also, where because you're expected to show up in a particular way, that when you're unable to perform or to complete the function you're expected to perform, then instead of just being like, I'm not leveling up today or for this month or for this year, I'm just not there yet, you rather bolster the persona with a further deception. The persona itself is already like a mask. And then you put two masks on. Anyway, obviously I shouldn't go there. So it's like the persona is itself a mask, and then you put a mask on a mask because you're not able to even meet the criteria of the persona itself. So that that definitely happens. I think it happens in some ways a lot more in spiritual or religious communities than even the external world. Because I guess in the conventional world, especially today because it's secular, I feel like the standards are just extremely low. And I'm sorry about the example I'm about to give. I'm not trying to like, I probably shouldn't even say it.
No, I want to know.
It's gonna sound like fat shaming. Like, I'm not trying to like body shame or anything like that. But like, I just know when I was growing up, like there was like a standard around, and maybe this isn't a healthy standard, so I don't want to like argue about that per se. Maybe this isn't the right standard, but there was like this standard where like, if you were like a bigger girl or guy, you kind of dress in a certain way to like kind of downplay that maybe you were like kind of getting into that obese category, which is like literally unhealthy. But nowadays it's like very much glorified. And I just feel like there's a lot of weird things that should probably not be so esteemed that kind of gets a lot of attention, a lot of focus on like positive energy even. Something like being morbidly obese. I think we could agree with a little bit of reason that being morbidly obese is like a problem just for the individual, certainly. But that can get a lot of attention today. So I feel like the secular world has become like, their standards have become really, really low, or we can say like super accommodating, whereas accommodating all sorts of weird things. But in religious community, they don't seem to have the same level of plasticity as the secular world. So their standards still tend to remain more rigid. So I think it happens a lot in the secular world that because of the rigidity of the standards, and when you're not able to meet that, then the tendency is to just put a mask on top of a mask, right? And so and then you had asked me this question, so I want to share that also. I do get a lot of I call them acolytes. And by the way, I say that as a joke, I swear to God. It is a joke, it's funny to me, and maybe here's a little bit of philosophy as far as the process of bhakti is concerned. In our shastras, one of the anarthas that comes from the practice of bhakti is called Taranga Rangini, which means riding the waves of bhakti. And the idea is that bhakti is the spiritual energy of God. And just as God is all attractive, his spiritual energy is all attractive. So those who embody bhakti more and more and more, they themselves become all attractive because of that energy that's kind of coming through them, them being kind of like the conduit. So what attraction means what? People want to worship you. People want to give you money. People want to give you facility. And I ain't gonna lie, I get a lot of that facility. Like, facility means I get a lot of people coming forward to me with kind of that energy, And it's very easy to like pull out the surfboard, ride the waves and enjoy life. It's considered a type of anartha that causes your body to be unsteady. In any case, I remember being very concerned about this at one point when I was in the ashram because I was like getting a lot of that attention at one point. I still get quite a bit, but I was getting like a lot of that attention at one point. And I was like, dude, I'm about to be hella arrogant. And I already got a chip on my shoulder because I'm a dancer. I still walk around like very regally. People still think I'm arrogant, and they're not really far from the truth, in all honesty. So I'm like, this is going to be really bad for me, my bhakti. I'm not going to be able to like develop. So I remember asking one particular senior monk about this particular problem. I asked him directly, like, this is happening to me. What am I supposed to do? And he said, oh, he literally talked like this to me. He was like, oh, you need friends. That was his statement to me. And he said it just like that. He's a very playful sannyasi. And he was like, oh, and then he started rubbing my chest like this. He was like, you need friends. And he said some other stuff after that, but that thing hit me very heavily. So now, partially probably due to that experience with the sannyasi and just my own sitting with it, I like deliberately try to downplay people's appreciation for me. Like when it gets like too reverent, and for me too reverent is almost like if anyone sends me a message like, you deeply inspire me. That's too reverent. But I understand like where they're coming from. Like you may have actually had a lot of impact in their life. And frankly speaking, we don't know because people don't often tell you the impact that you're having in their life. I'm talking about positive impact. When you're having negative impact, people run in their mouth regularly. But when you're having like actual positive impact, like hardly anyone tells you, you know?
Yeah.
Sidebar, you put out some quality work and everyone's got constructive criticism. I'm like, where is the constructive appreciation? Can I get some constructive appreciation? So when that appreciation does come, at least I guess for me, it has been hard to like understand how to deal with that. And so I've deliberately, my approach has been to just downplay my friendship because for me, it's the more integrity position. I'm not that pure. I'm not stupid, but I'm not like super smart, but I'm probably more well-read than a lot of the people that get into me. And so I come off in a particular way. So I may be inspiring for them. I can acknowledge that. And I do honestly acknowledge that, but I'm not pure. I got like issues on the integrity front, like a lot. And I'm not like extremely vocal about it, but I'm vocal enough to keep people's reverence at bay. Like, especially if I see it getting like a little bit too high, I'm just like, you know, I got this issue and that issue. Are you still attracted? And they're like, oh, nah, honey, I ain't attracted now. So I do like enough of that. And then also continue to perform the function that I may have been performing in terms of their inspiration, but kind of like tether it to like friendship, like we're friends, you know. And I honestly, I do feel like a lot of people have like affection for me, but it's like a brotherly affection. And they deal with me like an older brother or just like a brother. That's the energy that's there. And so there's affection and there's reverence in that relationship, but there's also that healthy like friendship. And that keeps me kind of honest and it keeps that relationship kind of honest. Anyway, that's how I deal with that particular energy.
I really like what well, Madhavapuri first, he wrote, I'm thinking about the way that true masters teach as well. It never seems to be obvious. I think we can agree that if someone says they have the answers, run. And I totally agree with that. Jaya is back. I totally agree with this, what Madhavapuri has said, just because I think that that's what we're talking about. You know, it's like, if I'm actually in integrity, then I'm very aware that I don't have all the answers, you know, and that's right. And that's both in spiritual life and like if we're talking about like social media and all this stuff and business. I think also in like a professional way, it's very honorable to say like, no, I don't have all the answers. This is my approach, you know, this is how I do things. This is how I see the problem, whatever it is, you know. And you can get a second opinion, you know, and that's like, for me, I always found, I used to have a lot of like, I still have them, but not so much, but I used to have a lot of like, body issues in terms of like knee, shoulder injuries, back injuries. I used to have a lot of injuries. And for me, it was always so creepy when I came across a doctor, and this would happen a lot. This would happen more often than you would think. And the doctor would basically be discrediting all the other doctors. Like, you're not gonna find any other opinion out there that's better than the opinion that I'm giving you. This is the only way. You have to get surgery. You know, I'd bring up stuff like, oh, well, what about yoga? Or what about this? What about acupuncture? And they'd just be like, that's not gonna work. That's, you know, that's dumb. That's BS. And I would always just like, I learned the hard way because I did, when I was young, I did get a surgery in my right knee. When I was like in my early 20s, and I learned the hard way. I was just like, nuh-uh. And then when I kept on having issues and I met doctors like that said stuff like that, I was just like, bye, see you later, you know? But I think that I think the thing is that when someone says they have the answer, maybe like we can all agree here that sounds kind of skeevy and it's like, run. But I think that when you're I mean, maybe we've all gone through this stage. I know I've definitely gone through this stage of being like impressionable and naive and just being like, oh, it sounds like, you know, you have the answer. You seem to be somebody that's like expert in your field because you said it on your Instagram bio. So I'm going to listen to what you're saying, you know? But then I really like, just to go into what Preeti is saying, I really, really like what she said. She said, I feel the secular world is so desperate to find something good. in this world that they keep lowering their standards, and the example of obesity that you gave, rather than rising to a spiritual standard like previous generations.
Right.
And I think that this is just such a deep comment. Preeti's always dropping the chit bombs. Beautiful, beautiful comments. Because I think, you know, this example that you gave specifically, but just in general, like if we look at how things were, okay, I'll put it this way. If you went to a PG-13 movie 20 years ago, and you went to a PG-13 movie today, they will be vastly different of what your eyes are seeing, you know? And so I really love what Preeti was saying, because it's just like that. I mentioned this to you, Jaya, right before, because I was having an incident that I'll share now. But this famous thing that Srila Prahlad says, Prahlad Maharaj says, Punas Charvatam Charvananam, right? That this material world is just like chewing that which has already been chewed, right? We're chewing that which has already been chewed. And right before we got on the call, everyone, I was eating a piece of corn, like corn on the cob, because it was a snack. And I was eating a piece of corn, and I go to Jaya. I'm just like, Jaya, you know when you like bite yourself on your lip, and then you literally bite yourself the next day in the same exact spot, and it happens like a third time? I was like, so that's happened to me now 3 times. And now I was just eating this corn, and it's happened to me like a 4th and a 5th time. And immediately that verse came to my mind, because I was just like, God, you know, I was thinking of that image of the cactus, of the camels that are eating the cactuses and tasting their own blood. And it is said that this is what the material world is like. We're chewing that which has already been chewed, trying to get enjoyment out of it, trying to get some like squeeze or drop of enjoyment out of it. Like Preeti has said, trying to find that something good. And really what we're doing is suffering. We're just tasting our own blood. We're just going through the motions, you know, keeping ourselves stuck in the wheel of karma. And that's that. And I mean, I had a very visceral experience. Like I was actually bleeding from my mouth, and I was just like, oh my God, okay, Krishna, okay. Like but I will say that I'll end with this. I will say that it's very easy to get caught up. And I feel like, you know, because you were talking about integrity in motion.
Right.
How do I keep that integrity going? Because it's so easy to get caught up in the persona. It's so easy to get caught up in the, you know, however many characters you have to describe yourself in your bio or whatever. It's so easy to play into that and be like, I am an expert. And to kind of, what's this word I'm looking for? To kind of like aggrandize your own experience. I know a lot of people that do that. You know, they've been practicing X, Y, and Z practice for 3 years, but what they've written down is that they've been practicing it for 15 years, you know?
Oh, wow.
And stuff like that. And I know a lot of people that do stuff like that, because it's kind of just like, whatever, you know, like there's this mood of just like, I have to set myself apart, pack, right?
Because you're the product, so it's natural that you have to do that.
So yeah.
You know, I'm gonna make a parallel here. This might not be a perfect one, but I often find this with, I call them do-gooders. There are a lot of them out there, people who feel that they can change the world. And now that the world doesn't need changing, but a lot of us need to be changing first. Honestly, and for real. And it's a lot harder to kind of embrace that. You know, I've often talked about this, like fix your own bed first, you know, get your own house in order before you talk about trying to get this big house of the world in order. I can hardly be confident that if you can't even keep your house in order, that you're going to bring order to the world, you know, and I've often talked about that. But there's a sense amongst people who really have that confidence that they have to be like, you know, in spiritual communities, we always like to give this point, well, the two can happen concurrently. I'm like, yeah, but my experience, like personally, and also just observationally again, is that one of them tends to get the upper hand if you're not sufficiently like stable in your own being, which, you know, if I'm like the average human being, then most of us aren't sufficiently stable in our own being. Then our attempt to change the world usually ends up changing us first before we actually change the world. And that's just a general problem that reformers of the world will have to face, you know, and there'll be many people there who embrace that, fine. There's just a part of the reality that they'll have to contend with, that the world has a tendency to change the reformer before the reformer reforms the world. The world is very good at outpacing our attempts for reforming it, basically. So I feel the same thing happens with us when we engage with the persona world, either it be Facebook or Instagram and so on. We go into it with the idea we want to offer something positive that to the world, but and we do to whatever degree we have something positive to share, motivational, inspirational, et cetera, et cetera. But we go into it with that genuine spirit. I feel, especially spiritual, but people who are like more deeply spiritual or have some practice and that enter into the arena, we do go into that arena with that motivation, but we come out of it with that world outpacing our attempts to provide good in that domain. So we go into the domain, we have something good to offer, and we're trying our best to, but that domain is outpacing our attempts. And so before we change or really offer something really effective, it may end up changing us. And the insidious nature of it is that the change is so gradual that you can't appreciate that it's changing you. And they call it, I think they use the example of the frog in the boiling water versus the frog when the water is gradually heating up. Apparently, if the water is super hot, you jump in, the frog jumps out. But if you gradually heat it, the frog doesn't really realize what's happening. And then it becomes too hot. By the time he realizes it's too hot, he's dead. And so in the same way, we go into, so I'm bringing this issue up, integrity and emotion, in the context of the digital media world, which we're participating in, to lesser or greater degrees. And yeah, I guess I'm feeling this myself more and more because I'm reading books about this also. I'm just getting started with this book called 10 Reasons Why You Should Quit Your Social Media Right Now by Jason something. It's a part of a book club I'm part of. So I'm gonna get into that. And maybe I'll be trying to get off if I can. I'll be like, when it comes to like actually like turning off Instagram or something. I can't. But whatever. I'm reading into it more and more and more. But as experientially, I go into it wanting to offer good, but I'm coming out of it being completely changed. And for me, like I may have mentioned this before, but before I moved to New York, I didn't even have a smartphone. I moved to New York in 2017. End of 2017, I moved to New York. Didn't even have a smartphone. And I lived in New York for almost half a year without a smartphone. But after I started serving at the Bhakti Center, people were like, bro, we need to get in touch with you. This email thing is just too slow. It's not effective enough. So I finally capitulated and I got a smartphone. I had one 19-year-old go with me to T-Mobile and get a smartphone. And after I got the smartphone, quality of life, but when I first started with it, it was like, okay, I'm going to use this for good, for the powers of good. And, less than 5 years later, I'm like, where's my inner life? Where's my substance? And I used to have a lot of substance in my estimation. That probably isn't even correct, but in my estimation, I had a lot more substance than I feel that I have sometimes today. And so just reflecting on that in the context of this topic, it's like I entered into this world that has, and I'm going to use this really strong word. Don't mind the word. The word is rape or molestation. And I was talking with some friends the other day. I'm like, listen, these Raksha leaders, these kind of ungodly leaders, they're raping us or molesting us externally. And that's the different, whatever they're doing externally with the economics. And they're molesting us or raping us internally with the digital media. And the word rape is a strong word, but I like to stick with that word because I feel, in a sense, that's what it feels like. But it's like, how sometimes, I don't know this personally, but I do know vicariously because I've had people confide in me. Sometimes when people deal with that, like rape or molestation, it can take them some years to actually process what happened to them, especially if it happened to them when they were really young. So we're like kind of toddlers dealing with this new technology. And a lot of our beliefs is like, well, technology isn't either good or bad. It's just, how you use it. Like, that's another topic. I do think that's a more naive notion. I think that's an overly simplified notion of it because all these technologies are created with very specific goals in mind. It's not that it's just benign, like, oh, we just came up with this and however it gets used. It's like, no, they had a very clear purpose for creating this. So anyway, you're using it and then they're like raping your inner world, right? All your attention is getting captured by these digital forces, whatever it is. And before you know it, 4 or 5 years later, or however much time, you realize that you don't have any inner life anymore. Or like inner life, that isn't really the thing. It's just a game with the persona and all of that. And so I guess to shut up, integrity and motion, I'm starting to feel like I'm starting to doubt if integrity, first of all, integrity itself, but integrity and motion is possible if we have not become freed of the, rape or molestation of these digital forces. Like, unless we really for real, deal with it in a for real cautious way and not just talking about it, then it's like I'm gonna be an empty shell, a person with a face without a soul, a mask without anything behind it. And that's probably strong, but that's kind of, just to the point. So the idea that you get changed before you'll change that space. So if you really want to be moving toward integrity in a healthy way, then you gotta stop getting raped. I'll probably say that like that anyway.
I think it's an apt word to use because essentially it's a violation. And the way that it's proven, if you haven't noticed it yet, I'll give an example. Have you ever noticed that on Instagram, like, even though you might be looking at inspiring things or like other bhakti yogis or other yoga teachers, whatever, you're looking at inspiring things, let's say most of the time,
right?
You look at one nonsense thing.
Oh my God.
And then you go to your home screen where like the discover screen, and Instagram doesn't show you any of the bhakti yogis and the whatever. They don't show you none of that. They show you all the nonsense in that one thing. And then it's a rabbit hole down because it's like, oh, nonsense. Okay. And then it's just like this. I will not be showing you what's on my nonsense discovery screen because that will be very embarrassing. But I had this moment with Instagram. I was like, I don't look at this stuff, like I look at other stuff. Like, why is it showing me this? And then I realized, I was like, oh, because they're like trying to get me. They're trying to get me.
Right.
And so it is a violation because essentially it's looking at that, that greatest common denominator of like what pleases everyone. What's the thing that, sexy, lustful things, or like nonsense memes, or like, violent video game. This is what is reaching out to the greatest common denominator. And it's like literally you play into that once and that's it. It's over, And one thing I will say is like I started to really notice what led me to kind of take my break from social media was I really started, and I'm just going to be very honest now so that I don't seem like I'm trying to puff myself up later, but I really noticed that my spiritual life was just going, and I was like literally asking myself, I was like, God, the quality of my sadhana is so bad. Where's my reading? Where's my hearing? Where's any of this stuff?
Where's my desire to do those things?
Where's my desire to do those things? Right. That love for Krishna is really the qualification is that desire to actually have it, and it's like when that's gone, it's like, oh God, I'm in trouble. And I really truly noticed that once I started to, I mentioned this last week where like the phone tells you at the end of the week how long you've been on different apps. I feel so embarrassing just saying this, but literally, I won't say the hours, okay? I won't say the hours to protect my ego just a little bit. But when I went on the break, literally my phone was like, your activity is down 90% from what it usually is. And like, it showed me how many hours I used to be on as to like how many I am on that. And I was like, yeah, this is a situation, okay. And so that really kept me like encouraged to keep on going on my break and just like reassess everything that I'm doing. But I personally made a concerted effort to be like, I'm going to hear every morning, I'm going to read every day, and I'm going to really try to like hear about about like my sadhana. How should my sadhana be? How should it be? And I'll say that like my spiritual life has definitely improved. Like I feel much more like actually this is important, like this is what's actually important. And I feel like sometimes it's easy to forget that because it's like, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Oh, well, I can spiritualize everything in my life. If I put the one of Krishna in front of everything, then it's like whatever. But I really liked something. I was listening to our Guru Maharaj speak the other day, and he was saying something about Kali Yuga that I really appreciated. This is His Holiness Radhanath Swami. And he was saying that in Kali Yuga, if you just leave things to be automatic, right? So whether it's relationships, whether it's your spiritual life, if you just leave them to be like automatic, expecting them that they'll just happen, right? That Kali Yuga will make sure that that's not how it happens, right? And that it will degrade. And actually I have to make a concerted, enthusiastic effort for my spiritual life and my spiritual relationships to like have life in them. If I start to zoom my focus onto marketing, social media, and I just, my spiritual life is going to be fine as long as I get in my 16 rounds, like that's where I was. As long as I do my 16 rounds, I'm fine. And then I started to realize I'm like, I'm not fine, like this is not fine. So wait, I want to see what Madhav Puri wrote because he was always having, I wonder if we only wrote about Krishna and only said words of appreciation, not criticism, maybe the algorithm would become beneficial. But as Kishore said, one slip. Yeah, that's what I started to. I was like, wait, I'm just posting yoga things and like looking at, I'm not. And then like one slip.
So one thing this month I'm gonna initiate it. I'm saying that I probably shouldn't say this public just in case. But part of because I have this men's groups that I host with some other friend for Arise, and we're reading this book together, like 10 Reasons Why to Quit Your Social Media Right Now. So we're reading this together, and we're deciding we'd like to do challenges in our group. Like we can call them like integrity challenges. So we like to do that in our group. So every week we have like a particular challenge. So the group doesn't know yet. And I don't know if they listen to Chit Chat or not. Some of them might. But one of the challenges that I'm going to implement is a fast from digital media once a week, like 1 day out of the week, just as a challenge. Because I read it, I was specifically reading about this on porn recovery sites because our men's groups we deal about sexual things and all that. And they were saying like, first of all, like stop watching porn. Like if you want to get out of this, you gotta kind of like stop. But the thing about the digital media world is that almost all paths lead to pornography. Like I don't know how it is for women, on the internet, but I can tell you more or less confidently for men that all paths pretty much can end up there very easily. It's like not very difficult.
If you keep on clicking the button, you'll eventually get there somehow or another.
It's just like one of those things that is very like kind of deeply connected. And that's maybe a topic for another time, maybe a topic for another podcast. But so one thing is that if you really want to kind of stop porn, and I've said this once before that like pornography, sexual sobriety is technology sobriety. And so kind of like learning how to like be disengaged or unplugged from the matrix of the digital world. And so this one porn recovery site I was looking at was saying like, you have to they gave this challenges to their students to just fast. All paths lead to women shopping. So ladies got their problem, the men, we got our problems. So just like trying out a fast. Of course, a lot of us may have like our work and so on, like certain obligations that require you to use digital media to whatever degree. But outside of those obligations, like just like fasting from it. And just really, I guess the challenge is to see to what degree our inner world has been captured and continually molested by these digital forces, so to speak. Because we like to think that it's not that bad until you can't stop. And so in order to really get a sense of how bad it's actually gotten, but less to get a sense of how bad it's gotten, but to give yourself the opportunity to have motion and toward integrity. You know,
Mm.
it's like again, we're not giving ourselves a chance to move because we're not
Mm.
letting go of this anchor to
Mm.
the lack of integrity, which happens to manifest itself in the present moment, largely
Mm.
as this digital media universe. And so we're gonna try that out just to kind of like move in that direction.
Mm. I think
Otherwise,
that's a great. I
yeah,
think that's a great thing to do. I mean, that's basically what I did, and I had like little moments where I would go on and like see what people were doing, but I was just. And you know what's so interesting though? How I'll be very honest. Something that I noticed for like on the business side, because like for me, I also use my social media for business and like
right,
my yoga business or whatever. And I was so apathetic to social media for this month that I stopped caring about it at all. I was just like, you know what? I'm not gonna announce my classes. I just don't care. Like whoever's coming, they'll come and like whatever. And the issue is, this is like I noticed not a huge decline, but just like a small decline in like people coming to class and numbers and this, which like to me, I was like, oh, this makes sense. I'm not announcing it. But I think that when people do use social media for business or use it for like whatever, it's really easy for it to just like, like merge my business life or my professional life versus my like my life, me,
right.
And so then I turn into that business persona, and there's a lot of fear around if I stop productivity or if I stop doing it, then I'm going to lose business. And then that comes into like our attachment to money and whatever, which is a whole nother topic. But I really, really, noticed that in myself. I was just like, oh, yeah, like there was that fear. There was that fear of like, if I stop, then I'm going to lose business or whatever.
I get that. My fear, my personal fear around it, honestly, is that some of like I want to say a lot of the relationships that I really value are with people that live not with me. They live here or they live there. And I talk to these people regularly through certain apps. Like regularly means like probably almost every day. Like
Yeah.
telling jokes. I mean, like even you and I, sharing
Yeah.
memes or this, that, and the other. We haven't actually seen each other face to face in like over
A
a year.
year.
Oh, but and so that's part of the fear that and this leads to another point. Maybe this is really for another podcast also, where these sort of like digital communities have alienated us from like practical communities. Like in other words, so
Yeah.
like now you're like your business is alienated from the world that's directly around you. Like,
Yeah.
why is your business with everyone in the whole Earth region?
Yeah.
Why isn't it just with people in your immediate region? And so that's the fear. Like for me, that's the fear that I've become linked to this sort of digital community and alienated from the community that's around me. And so if I like go to social media fast, then I'm literally leaving that community that I find to be important, nourishing, etc. And that becomes
I have so much to say on that, and I'm going to keep it short because I was having exactly this conversation with one of our godbrothers last night, where I was telling him, I feel like when COVID happened, and obviously it was a huge health crisis, and it also turned into a financial crisis for many people.
right.
It was really clear and evident that many people just moved everything to online because that's all that we could do.
Right.
And so there was a lot of emphasis on, being an online yoga teacher, an online coach, an online Ayurvedic practitioner, an online whatever, whatever. I'm thinking of things in our community.
Right.
And what's it called? And I was telling him, I really, really, I'm just realizing for myself that I hate teaching online.
Yeah.
Like I don't like it, like I just don't like it. And I don't like having to create a persona. Like that's what I realized in my month-long break. I don't like having to create a persona that people can relate to online. That's like maybe a smidgen of who I am. And like, that's not the real me, And I'm here in Ecuador. I'm here in Cuenca. And there's a Bhakti community here, and there's a beautiful center. And I've started getting very involved, teaching some planning to teach them programs, but in general, just like being with them, going to Mangal Arati twice a week and meeting with the director and just being with him, being with him as a brother. He's very sweet. And I was telling my godbrother yesterday, I was just like, that experience, like just reconnecting with people on a physical level, teaching in a physical way, like it just reminded me how much I hate this. I hate teaching online because it does feel like a violation. It does feel like, just speaking from a business perspective, you don't know how many ads I get on my phone, whether it be from Instagram, whether it be from Facebook, whether it be email. I don't know how these people got my email of like, put your yoga stuff on this platform, put it on this platform. So many direct messages I get, put it on, we're a platform that does this and this, join us, be an influencer. And I'm just like, can I just be like, can I just teach?
No.
Can I just be? No, you can't. And I think that the reason I wanted to say that was just because I feel like the internet persona has just become so much stronger, obviously during the pandemic, because like we were forced to do that in a way. And it is almost like we've forgotten how to be in person,
Right.
For me, it was really natural to be in person. And I got really shocked when this person told me like, actually, I love doing things online. And I was like, what? He's like, actually, I feel really nervous in person. I feel really nervous talking to people in person. And I was like, for me, it's the opposite. When I'm in person with people, I feel very at ease and I feel very natural. And when I'm online, I feel like I'm beholden to this persona, if that makes sense,
No, absolutely. Well, aside from like and dislike, even on a more practical level, like when things get rough, as they inevitably might or will, um, you're gonna probably need help from your immediate surrounding.
Exactly.
And so this is the kind of the more insidious, like you have a world of like followers, but if you go through some real shit, ain't nobody gonna be there for you. Like no one from that digital universe will or can, like, and that may not be entirely true. Like you can do like GoFundMe's and so on when you're like struggling. I've seen people have success with stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm not trying to like wholesale dismiss this, but I'm just speaking in terms like practically when things get really heavy, you kind of need a community that's around you or someone that you have that connection to that's close. That doesn't mean stop coming to chit chat, y'all. I'm just saying. I'm just saying this is kind of, it appears to me, part of the obstacle and moving towards a more integral, if that's the right word, position.
Yeah.
Because the digital universe, you always have to enter into a digital universe with your avatar. Like there's no other, because it's limited in terms of the scope in which it can represent you fully. Even though like we're having a conversation, and I think you're getting a little bit of our personality, but you're not gonna get the full scope unless you like with us, the full range of our personality. That's impossible.
Yeah.
So we're literally like an avatar manifestation of our fuller self that doesn't really exist in this universe. And so that's all you're going to be able to get in this digital universe. And that's not going to be enough practically to nourish you, especially when there's time of need. Like what happens if this digital universe is suddenly inaccessible for whatever reasons? And that can happen. Like I know we live in this dream world where we think like the internet will always be there and technology will always be there. Like what if it isn't? And I mean, I don't know if there's any reason to even believe that it would be, because people with power, they tend to assert their power aggressively. Jivo jivasa jivanam, the weak are the food for the strong. So someone gets really powerful and says, listen, if you want to use this internet, you got to pay, $100 a month or anything crazy. Like, and then all of a sudden, a lot of people don't have, then what will you do? What will we do? And so this is, another aspect for me. It feels like another aspect of becoming into an integrity. No one online really knows what you're like, but the people who live around you, they know what you like. You're forced to kind of like step up your game a little bit in terms of the integrity thing if you're living with a real life community. So anyway, it appears to me this creates an obstacle to some degree. So in order to get over that, so I can really have intentional energy for motion toward integrity, it requires a little bit of fasting and yeah, and think more focus on that inner self, so to speak, and movement.
Mm.
I don't know. I sometimes like I don't know if there's any hope for me, Christian. Like for real. Like I've been had good. I've been had good, and I don't know if there's any hope. I should have just never got that phone in 2017. I'll be all right. But now I'm like I've been totally had, and I don't know. Like, I'm getting some intuition about it now, and some awareness. Maybe it's too late. I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to put a good foot forward. At least
Yeah.
month.
Yeah, I'm also trying to put a good foot forward, like, and it's really little things, you know, like it really, like the little things really do matter, and I feel like sometimes it doesn't. We think that it doesn't matter.
Right.
I'll speak for myself. I'll speak for myself that like I wasn't really in a practice of putting on tilak every morning. Like I wasn't, like, since I left the ashram. And the ashram, of course, when we were living at the Bhakti Center like this. And I wasn't really in this practice. I was kind of just like, it's okay, whatever, you know, it's Bodhi, it's fine. Jam my rounds, got my 16 rounds done,
Right.
all good. And my partner was like really kind of getting on my case, and he was just like, you know, you have to put on tilak in the mornings. Like it's good for you. It's good for your spiritual life. And I've been hearing from some of his inspirations lately. And yeah, I just like heard this one inspiring talk from them where I felt like really reignited. I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna put tilak on every morning. And I've been putting on tilak every morning for like a week now. And I've been feeling like really good. You know, it's like really like a small thing, even though it's actually a big thing in our philosophy. But sometimes because we might think it's a small thing, and just that small thing, it's like really transformed just my day. Like I wake up in the morning, I take a shower, and then before I chant my rounds, I put on my tilak, you know, and it's like really, really nice. And I feel like when our energies are usurped by social media or the phone, you know, like if anyone is in a practice of like waking up and just checking their phone first thing in the morning, it sucks. Like it really sucks. And I'm telling you from experience, like it sucks. Like immediately your mind and your energies are arrested by just like, ooh, who did what and what are the stories and how many likes and like da-da-da, whatever. And therefore my energies can't go towards putting on tilak in the morning, you know, or like trying to be spiritual in the morning. It's like,
or even like taking a shower. Okay, we won't spill the beans there too much.
Oh, Krishna. But one thing that I was gonna say, an example, kind of like an image example that I thought was really nice. I'm doing this. I'm doing a training right now. That's like not really a yoga training. It's more about like strength and mobility because I have some knee issues, whatever, and it's helping a lot. And this guy said something that was so interesting, and I really liked it. And he said, we have to think about tension and intention. And I was like, what? Okay. And he was just like, so you can create tension with your body. Anyone can create tension with their body, right? So he showed us like a squat. He's like, so I'm here holding this squat and tension is created. Anyone can do that, right? And he's like, now I want you to stand up this way. And he gave an intentional focus of like from your foot. He's like, okay, now I want you to stand up from the squat this way, pushing your knees back. Now I want you to stand up from the squat this way. And he had us stand up from the squat with all these different intentions. And it felt every single time completely different, right? Sometimes it felt really bad and like, oh, I'm not gonna do that. Sometimes it felt really good. And I was thinking about hearing you speak about intention. It's like we all in this material world have that ability, you know, to create that tension in our life, whether we are creating it or whether it's happening to us, right? Like we are all going through similar struggles. It's the material world, etc., right? However, you know, that intention of what I'm doing to get through it is really what's going to make the actual difference, you know? So if I'm kind of just like playing into the persona, that's kind of like, it feels kind of like an escapism route, you know? Like it feels like I'm not really dealing with my internal self. There's a lot of tension. I'm dealing with the tension of having a roof over my head and, you know, putting food on the table if I have a family, and like just maintaining this material body in itself is a tension. Tension. I feel tense. You know, I feel tense right now. And all of this stuff. Okay, fine. I have all of this tension, but what am I doing about it? You know, am I creating a persona? Am I going to act in integrity? And so like all of these choices, essentially, like decisions and choices, that's like the intention, right? Like my decision or my choice to do something. And then I think that the worst thing is that social media really numbs us to the point where our choices and our decisions become automatic. It feels like I have no choice anymore. I just wake up in the morning and I'm like, "Whoop,"
Right.
you know? And I feel like there's almost a loss of freedom or choice because I become symbiotic with this, device. And then I'm just standing up from a squat the wrong way my whole life and busting my knees, even though it looks cool, and right. I feel like that's kind of what we're doing in social. Oh, it looks cool to like do this. Right. I'm an expert in my field. I have 50,000 followers that I bought, like whatever it is, but that will crumble, right? The knees will crumble from standing up in the squat bad. And so will, the persona that you've built up, it will also crumble.
I like that a lot. And yeah, that rounds it off for me. Like we started off with, integrity is hard. Integrity is the congruence between the persona and the animus, right? That's how we started off. That schism between the two is a eternal human problem. But as long as we're moving toward that congruence between the two, then that's called integrity in motion. But in order for integrity to truly be in motion, it can't just be like an empty practice, so-called practice. Well, at least I'm doing this. Somehow others going on. But it has to be like intentional energy placed into what it is that you're doing to move towards that thing. And that requires releasing yourself from some of the energies that disallow you to give that intention. Because they've hijacked your mental forces, your intellectual forces, your emotional forces, even they've all been hijacked by these energies. And so needing to like step back from that so you can actually give the intention to put into the motion that you need to move towards integrity. And of course, if you're in integrity, you're going to be a happier person. And if for spirituality, you'll be the type of person that can become truly free, truly emancipated from the bondage of this world. Yeah, that's everything that we spoke. It rounds off very nice. So maybe I'll try to do a little video. I haven't done anything on my Instagram for literally like 2 months. Like I share like maybe one thing, and I just haven't been inspired. And that's why I kind of wanted to talk about this today. And I got a little inspiration to do a little something, but I'm gonna do it with intention.
Do it with intention.
And then I'm gonna get off as soon as possible before I get in trouble. Like, oh, what's this thing? Oh.
Well, I even though you haven't been active on the gram, I did see that you posted something a little incendiary on Facebook.
That was today, and that was because I've actually been putting more intention into my study, and it got me all fired up. And so it came out over today.
Terrible. When I saw that, I was like, ooh. If y'all don't know what I'm talking about, go to Chaya's Facebook. Okay, yeah, I think it rounds it off for me too. I think it's been such a fun conversation, and thank you all for your comments. Thank you, Namras, for being here. It's always really inspiring and encouraging to see you here. Very encouraging. And Pat's been here since the beginning, and so is Madhavapuri and Priti and Kavi, and thank you all so much. We'll be here next week on Monday at 5, and hopefully
we're gonna have a guest. We're gonna have a guest.
Yeah, we're gonna have a guest. It's either gonna be one or the other. But I'm gonna try to work on seeing if Vrin will come on, because that'll be really nice to keep on talking about this topic.
Yeah, she's so deep. She'll have amazing insight.
She's so deep. She's so deep, and I feel so sad that I never took so much association as much as I could from her. But that's something that the Instagram Messenger is good for, I guess, right?
Okay, not to contradict our conversation.
Okay. So thank you everyone so much. Hari Bol. Thank you, Jai Jagannath Prabhu. And we'll see you next Monday at 5 p.m. Hari Bol. Hare Krishna.